Hello and welcome to the Sideways Football Special. Professional football has always been a bastion of hard drinking, drug taking and gambling. So we've taken a nostalgic look at some of our favourite players from the past and moulded them into a team that gives a completely different meaning to the phrase, "Oh, he's hit the bar." Some of them got clean and some of them lost out to their addiction, but they've all made it into our Addicts XI. It's time for kick-off, and as we join our commentators, Martin Pankhurst and Graham Landy.
Hello.
How's it going?
All right.
I'm glad you made it.
You got your paint splattered spectacles on again.
I know, yeah. I did scrape some of the paint off, but I quite like them. They're very comfortable.
Righto.
So what, you just had to quickly dash out then or something, did you? After a appointed time of 11:15, you couldn't be bothered to make it?
Yeah, I got a panic call from my sister who couldn't get a double mattress up her stairs. And that isn't a euphemism.
Oh dear. Yeah, we could do a lot with that.
I had to pop round there and help her, which I know, strictly speaking, is not in keeping with social isolation guidelines. But,
True.
But, you know, needs must. What are we doing then?
Well, I think we're going to do our football special, aren't we? I'm all geared up to it. I'm all geared up to the football special now. We've taken a long time to get to this point, really, haven't we? We've always said we'd never talk about football on air.
Well, we try and avoid talking about football in the normal edition because it sort of polarises opinion, doesn't it? Some people don't want to talk about football, which is completely understandable. I must say just something about football before we start, and that is, I don't know how you feel, but in the period of isolation when football's all stopped, I've not really missed it.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because I was thinking the same. I think it's I'm not missing it because the watching the scores come in each week and West Ham losing time after time after time just got tiresome. It's quite nice to have a break from the fear of relegation. I think that's what it is. If West Ham were roaring away at the top of the league, if they were in Liverpool's position, for example, I'd be furious. I really would.
If West Ham were roaring away at the top of the league, or that you'd probably start drinking again because you'd be in a drunken stupor thinking that was the case.
I'd have dropped a few
You'd be looking at the league table upside down, I suspect. It reminds me of a guy I used to play cricket with, actually, who he was latterly in his career, he was captain, I think, of the fourth team. And I remember asking him one week how the fourth team were doing, and he said, "Let me put it this way, we're doing so badly, we're in danger of falling out of the Kent Messenger." Which I thought was lovely.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, especially, if you're playing for the fourth 11 anyway, you're probably not that good a cricketer, are you?
Well, there's no need to be disparaging about the quality of people's cricket, is there? That's not very nice.
No, not really. No.
I must have turned out for the fourth team on occasions, I think. I'll tell you the other thing, though, that struck me about this football special. One of the reasons I don't want to do these specials too often is I actually had to do some work for this. Did you? Good.
But you're not really in the psychotherapist's chair at the moment, are you? You haven't got your professional hat on.
Not really.
Which this is more of a hobby, isn't it? So I think doing a little bit of research, which obviously I did, because that would be wrong. I did get quite a few notes together, but I needed to sift through stuff, really. I like to get it down in written form before I can make my final decisions. Yeah.
Well, I know you've done a lot of research, because when I said to you at the weekend we should do that football special, you said I still need a couple more days preparation. I thought, crikey. So how do you want to do this then? Because we've both chosen a squad, haven't we?
We have.
And we should probably make it clear at this point what the criteria for selection was. Do you want to cover that?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, the criteria that I was looking at is that anyone that's played obviously at the highest level. In fact, all mine are internationals anyway. So they're all international footballers. And I've selected like a 4-3-3 formation.
Yeah, me too.
But in fact, I've sort of gotten sort of 4-3-2-1, if anything, really. A bit like the Christmas tree formation. You remember like Terry Venables used to like using? Certainly during the Euro 96, he used it to great effect. And so I've gone 4-3-3 only because I think the two players I've picked just behind the front man fit that position better than out and out wingers.
You really have thought about this, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Yes. Well, I reckon. I mean, we haven't collaborated on this at all, so it's going to be really interesting because I think we're going to come up with a lot of the same players in the same position. So that'd be interesting.
So I too have only chosen internationals, but I tried in the main to choose players that I felt some sort of affinity with, so that, I don't know, I'd seen them play, or they were at least playing in my kind of football consciousness. I think I've done that for the most part. Probably all but one of my players would fall into that.
Okay, well, I think a fair amount of mine would fall into that category as well. But
yeah, well, you're older than me, don't forget.
Well, one of them in particular, we'll come to him right at the end there, which is quite a nice link. But
have you chosen substitutes?
I have. Well, I've got a bench. I've got a bench with some subs on.
Isn't it?
Well, I've got 5 on the bench. You know what I mean? So you can. Have you got a manager?
Oh no, I can think of one before we're finished, though.
Yeah, I think we probably think there's only one person that really fits the bill for being manager, but we can come to that at the end.
Well, I know already who I've chosen as my manager. I'm just going to write it down now, in case I forget.
Do you want to finish with the manager or start with the manager then?
I think we should finish with the manager. I think we should go from back, shouldn't we?
Yeah. I've put my notes in that order, so starting from the goalkeeper, working forward. Okay.
So who have you got in goal?
Roy Carroll.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you've got as well?
Why did you choose Roy Carroll? No, I didn't have Roy Carroll, actually.
Oh, right. Okay. It's just that obviously the he had a problem with alcohol and gambling. Obviously, he was an international player for Northern Ireland a number of times, but also he did
go through his stats now.
No, I'm not. No, because that would make this way too long and
How many
quite
clean
boring.
sheets did he keep?
Oh, I don't know about that. I know he got 45 caps, and he won 3 league titles and cups with Olympiacos. If that's any good to you?
No, that's not. I'm not interested.
Basically, he got in because he's done a stint in rehab, and he played for West Ham for a while, if you remember rightly.
Played for West Ham for a while. Now, interesting. Have you got anything else to say about Roy Carroll?
No, I've got loads, but I'll leave it there. Really, been into rehab back in 2006, and he's stayed sober ever since. So I tips my hat to the fella.
I think I've got a better goalkeeper than you.
Oh, okay, go on.
Peter Shilton.
Peter Shilton. He didn't come up on my radar as having problems in that area.
45 years worth of gambling problems.
Oh, did he? Okay.
By his own admission.
Well, okay. I mean,
I'll tell you the interesting thing about Peter Shilton that I'd forgotten, and it's kind of ridiculous that I'd forgotten this, but he also was signed by West Ham.
Was he?
Do you remember that?
No.
Never played a game. He was signed by West Ham towards the end of his career. I think he's probably over 40 at the time. And he was there for a little while, didn't play any games, and then at the end of the season he was transferred somewhere else. I can't remember where he went to.
I didn't realise he had addiction problems, but yeah, I'll give you that one. I'll let you have the goalkeeper.
Okay, good. Okay. So where do you want to go next? Right back?
Well, I can go right back or left back. I don't mind.
You choose.
Okay, well, at left back, I've got Kenny Sampson.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I mean, I saw Kenny Sampson on I don't know if you ever saw him on the Jeremy Kyle show, which was...
I know you like a bit of daytime television. I didn't.
No, I didn't actually see it at the time, but I looked it up on YouTube because I knew he'd been on there, and it was one of my pet hates was the way that Jeremy Kyle used to treat addicts. Yeah. And how he'd say, right, you're off to rehab now. You know, there's a car waiting outside. Now that is coercion of in very very poor taste. I think that I could see he didn't actually go at that stage.
It's never going to work, is it? That?
No, it's not. No, it's not. And when you look at the, we may have talked about it before, but the results from those people that Jeremy Kyle sent off to rehab for the sake of a TV show was appalling. And so I felt really sorry for Kenny Sampson. I could see the fear in his eyes when they said, there's a car outside waiting for you to go. So I've put him in because I think he was treated very badly, but also he was a brilliant left back, wasn't he? I mean, he played 86 times.
Maradona at the World Cup
in 86. 86, I think he did, yeah. And I mean, he came out and said, because a lot of people were saying they'd forgiven Maradona and this sort of thing, and he was saying how much he hated him. He was a cheat and all that. But I just thought that, again, going back to the Jeremy Kyle thing, they were showing pictures of him when he was shown crashed out in the local park, drunk, slumped up against a tree. And his addictions, because he had gambling addictions as well. And he ended up losing his home and his marriage and all his money. And I could sort of relate to that. And but his problems really did kick in when he finished playing. So he was fulfilling that, or he was filling that gap, wasn't he? That a lot of sportsmen feel and find when they finish their career.
Did your problems kick in when you finished playing for the Royal George?
Do you reckon if we had a drinkers 11 for everyone from the Royal George would be in it?
I don't know if I would have got in. I probably would have got in those days.
You probably will. I think it was a prerequisite. Being sponsored by a pub, it's you have to go back to the pub afterwards and drink plenty of their fine ale. So
and eat the potatoes that were provided.
Yeah, full of E. coli on the bar. But it was
going back to Kenny Sansom for a minute.
Yeah,
he was. I mean, there were a few of these, but he was probably one of the selections that I made that actually really made me feel quite melancholic, because from what I can gather, I mean, I don't know, he may be sober now, but certainly until very recently, he was still drinking, wasn't he?
He is sober at the moment, apparently.
Is he?
As far as you can find out when you research it, he is sober. And yeah, he's made great strides in that area, yes. But I thought, as one of the best ever left backs, really. I know he's only just behind Ashley Cole in the number of caps for England as a left back. So, and a great shame again, a guy whose life spiraled out of control. So I like it. I like Kenny, even though he's an Arsenal. I'll put him in there.
Yeah, there aren't too many. When I think about left backs, there aren't too many names that spring immediately into your mind, and his would be one of them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, he had a culture.
I'd say the people I immediately think of when I think of left back are Kenny Sansom, Julian Dix,
obviously,
Ashley Cole, and Adam Blunden, who used to play left back for the Royal George. I could never understand why Adam played left back, because he's right-footed. I'm sure he is.
I think we need
you a kind of different. It gives you something slightly different, doesn't it? I'm sure
it does.
Play left back.
Well, I don't remember him playing left back, but I remember certainly with the Royal George, we used to fit people in whoever turned up sometimes, wasn't it?
Maybe he played right back. I'll have to ask him. He certainly played full back. I'm pretty certain of that. I'm going to ask him. Maybe he had a good engine and got up and down.
Certainly over the years I played for the Royal George, I played in every position, including goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So I did every position over the years. But anyway, we're slightly.
I did consider putting you in my 11, actually.
Did you? Yeah, I reckon I could have held my own amongst these people easily.
Well, you could have held your own drink-wise.
At the bar, I'd have been.
Yeah, I'm not sure you would have cut it as an international footballer.
No, I don't think I quite reached those heights.
Anyway, right back.
Gary Charles.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I like Gary Charles. I mean, obviously, I think he became more famous once he went into that tackle with Paul Gascoigne, didn't he, in the FA Cup final?
Yeah.
And I think that it overshadowed. He only played a couple of times for England, but his sort of struggle with alcoholism and other addictions, I think, have been quite public. And he's, he went to prison. He did 6 months in prison for dangerous driving and drunk driving and that sort of thing. But now I like the fact that he delivers talks and workshops, and he goes into prisons and schools and other football clubs and does one-to-ones with people that are struggling with addiction issues. And he's involved. I think he's got an ambassadorial role with this new rehab centre. It's called Delamere up in Cheshire. And their motto is that where entering recovery, they celebrate entering recovery as an act of strength and courage. And I like that. I think that's good. And I think Gary Charles, he does a lot for people in addiction and a lot for footballers and ex-footballers that have had similar problems. So I think he's a straightforward shoe into this.
Yeah, I think we should celebrate. I think we should celebrate anyone going into any sort of therapy as an act of courage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
The one thing that really struck me about Gary Charles, I read a quote from him which said, he said, "I wasn't a typical alcoholic. I could go long periods without drinking," which I thought was quite telling, because we were talking about that before, weren't we? How sometimes you will tell yourself that you don't have a problem by making up some sort of spurious rule that tells you that you don't have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he spiraled out of control. I think once he'd gone to prison, it sort of opened his eyes to the fact that, he did have a problem because he was taking all sorts of risks unnecessarily so.
Do you remember who he finished his career with?
He with West Ham, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, he was born in Newham, so he was a West Ham boy.
He was a West Ham boy, but he got away, didn't he?
Yeah. He did get away, but he ended up at. He went to Benfica for a while, didn't he? It's most. I think he's most famous for his time at Forest, probably because of that cup final business. But
he spent some time at Aston Villa as well, didn't he?
He did, and Derby. Yes. So he had a few clubs. So he's a decent player, steady.
Okay, Gary Charles, I think we can agree.
We'll have his
place in the squad.
He's a steady right back, isn't he?
Centre halves.
Well. I've got two. The two centre halves I've chosen. Obviously, the first one is a proper shoe-in because I've been a big fan of his for a long time, because of his work in the field of recovering addicts. And obviously, it's Tony Adams.
Yeah,
you'd have him in there, I'm sure.
I have got him in there, yeah. And I mean, I'd have him in there, even if obviously I wouldn't be able to select him if he hadn't had addiction problems. But I think I'd have him in there just for that brilliant bit of video footage from when he was taking training at Malaga or wherever he was managing. Do you remember that little YouTube clip of all of his players looking bewildered as he was giving them instructions? It was brilliant.
His management career has been pretty short-lived, really, isn't it? It's been a little bit cheap. He went to Portsmouth as a manager for a little while as well, wasn't he? Which is a bit weird.
He's been terrible as a manager, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. I think by his own admission, I don't think he's really cut out for that position. But I think that he's a great player. I mean, he's one of those rare players also that he's a one-club man, wasn't he? Spent all his career, played over 500 times for Arsenal. And I admire that, don't you?
I do admire that. And I'll tell you the other thing that I noticed when I was looking back at my selection, I noticed that there were a sprinkling of Arsenal players. I don't know if that says anything about the culture at Arsenal. But
I think it did. I think it did at the time. I think it did. Yeah, a lot of clubs had drinking cultures, and when West Ham were terrible in the sort of 70s, weren't they?
But I think it also reflects the fact that I've always had quite a soft spot for Arsenal. Actually, they would always be the club that I could tolerate seeing win something, whereas it would be very hard for me to tolerate seeing any other English club win anything.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I've always had a soft. I thought Arsene Wenger was a breath of fresh air when he came to the Premiership, and also because obviously my younger brother Paul, he was an Arsenal fan. So since he passed away, I've always kept a little bit of an eye out on their results for him. And so I've never had a problem with Arsenal. That's for sure. I'm all right with them, and I think Tony Adams was, although he was often called Donkey from the stands and things, and people abused him probably because he was too good for the teams that he was playing against.
He was a magnificent player.
I thought so, and when you look back on the scrapes he got into, through his drinking, when he ended up with fights in nightclubs, and he went to jail as well, didn't he? And he was like 4 times over the limit when he crashed his car. And I read his book Addicted, which I thought was brilliant, and I think it got a lot of critical acclaim at the time. And I've reread it as a recovering alcoholic. So the first time I read it, it was whilst I was still drinking, and all that sort of made a bit of sense to me. It made much more sense in sobriety.
Was it uncomfortable to read when you were still an active alcoholic?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was uncomfortable reading because I sort of knew that was probably where I was heading. and I think that I rarely read a book twice, but that was one I did because I thought it was nicely written, and I thought it was very honest, and I think the fact he's devoted so much of his time since he found sobriety. I mean, he's got that Sporting Chance clinic that he opened up, didn't he? Which was, put a lot of money into that and raised a lot of money, and he's constantly talking about his addiction and trying to help others. The clinic has got a 12-step program, which is, based on the philosophy of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he gets a lot of people in there, and he's got some quite high-profile patrons, like Elton John, for example, we've talked about on a previous podcast.
He's my chairman, by the way.
Is he? Oh, I haven't got a chairman.
Oh. So you haven't done this properly then?
Have you got a physio? No, not right. Yes, I have got one, but anyway, we'll come to that later on. So in fact, one of his Arsenal teammates, we're going to come on to later on, is also a patron of that Sporting Chance clinic. So
I know who that is, and he's in my side as well. So who's your other centre half then?
Paul McGrath.
Yeah, me too.
You got him in there as well?
Yeah.
And again, I mean, he was. I'm
pretty sure he's still drinking.
I think he is.
He certainly was still drinking in 2019 after numerous relapses. I mean, he, in a way, Paul McGrath is an example of something we've spoken about a lot, which is, the idea that the more times you relapse, the harder it gets to recover. Yeah, I think he was a great player. And he was good in spite of his. He was the archetypal, I think. Alcoholic who still manages to hold down some sort of job, and to hold down, to be a functioning alcoholic as an athlete, as it were, must be really tough. It must be really tricky. And I read once that he said, I drink for oblivion, really, which I guess that a lot of alcoholics would recognise.
Yes, I haven't read his biography. He's got one called Back from the Brink, which I must read at some point. But apparently in there he does mention the point that he was so desperate for a drink at one time that he drank Domestos, which I didn't know had any alcohol in it. But obviously it must have given him some sort of, cleaned him out nicely. But, when you get to that point, we've had a lot of people come into groups that have drunk aftershave, and hand cleaning lotion and that sort of thing, where the desperation is that great.
You struggle to get a hand cleanser at the moment.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? Yeah. But I was reading about Paul McGrath that obviously he was drinking at the time that he was at Man United, wasn't he, before he went off to Aston Villa. And Fergie, when he came along, and he identified him straight away as being of having a problem and sold him on to Villa. Because I think Fergie was trying to get rid of the drinking culture at Man United anyway, because, people like Brian Robson that were about, weren't they? And there were big drinkers there. And I think Paul McGrath obviously was a bit of a ringleader, and so he sort of flushed him out. But a great centre back, and played for Ireland in the World Cups and things. Yeah, he's a good player, decent player.
What I found interesting about Paul McGrath was that he said that when Ferguson sold him and he left Man United, obviously Man United were on the brink of greatness, but he bore no ill will to Ferguson. He really understood why he'd done it. He said that he felt for a long time that he thought that Alex Ferguson hated him, and that Alex Ferguson probably thought that he hated Ferguson. But actually there was I think a great deal of respect between the two of them, but just that Ferguson couldn't tolerate having that sort of wild card, that sort of maverick in his squad.
No, he was an unconventional person, wasn't he? And I think that that sort of wild partying sort of animal didn't really fit with the way that Fergie wanted to build Man United going forward. And obviously, as it shows, Fergie was absolutely right, wasn't he?
There was only room for one leader at that club, wasn't there? It was him.
Well, there was really. He certainly flushed out Paul Ince, didn't he? He saw he was a bit of a maverick and saw himself as the governor. So he got rid of him as well, didn't he?
Judas, you mean?
Judas Ince, yeah. I can only call him Ince. I can't use his first name.
I'm surprised you brought him up. You actually soured the whole conversation now.
I have to be honest. Yeah. I've upset myself, to be honest. I deserve it. The midfielders.
Oh, you've got a slightly different formation here, haven't you?
Well, I've got 4-3-3 still.
All right, okay. Have you got a holding midfielder?
Well, not really.
Oh, I see. So you're going to leak goals, are you?
No, well, I'm going to go with Flair on this. I'm going to score more than we concede, really.
Okay.
3 players. Do you want to on the left of midfield?
Okay, if you want to go that way, I was going to go with my central holding midfielder first, but as you wish.
Okay, well, I'll go the left midfield. I've got Stan Bowles.
Oh, nice, Stan Bowles. Yeah, that's good.
He only squeaked in because he only played 5 times for England, which was a bit of a disgrace, really, because he was an absolute genius, wasn't he?
Stan Bowles, that is a good shout. Yeah.
Well, I liked him because although he was a massive heavy drinker and a real party man, he ended up with massive gambling debts as well. So he got in under that basis, but also. They always used to say about Stan Bowles that he could pass a ball, but he could never pass a betting shop, which was a nice phrase, really.
Wasn't Stan Bowles also the source of that anecdote that when he went off to play for England the first time, and whoever was managing England at the time, I can't think who it would have been then. But anyway, whoever was managing England said to him that if you're not having a good game, I'm going to pull you off at half time. And he said, that's good. At QPR, I only get half an orange.
It's probably Ron Greenwood then, wasn't it, in those days? I don't know, could have been. Would he be manager of England at that time? Well, there was, because someone said about him that he could open a tin of beans with his left foot, which I thought was really good because he always said that his right foot was only for standing on. He never touched the ball with that. But his left foot was so good, wasn't it? And he was just a joy to watch, wasn't he? And and he never took himself too seriously. And I think that was, which I liked that. I liked that.
Yeah, I'd say Stan Bowles is a bold choice in your midfield, but yeah, that's I applaud that. Yeah,
I've gone for Flair right across here, really, because only Stan Bowles. I've got to have him because.
Why don't you give me your other 2 midfielders? Because my feeling is that probably we'll agree on at least one of the other 2.
Okay. Well, at the right side of midfield, I'll leave the centre one for a minute. At the right side of midfield, I've got Paul Merson.
Okay.
Did you agree on him?
I've got Merson.
Yeah. And again, as I say, he's one of the patrons of the Sporting Chance Clinic that Tony Adams run, and he was. I mean, he admitted to having addictions to alcohol, cocaine, and gambling. I mean, it's what we call a proper addict in groups. He's addicted to absolutely everything. There's no one particular drug of choice. They're all there, and he takes them all in massive quantities and properly goes for it. But again, I mean, he went to rehab, admitted his problems, and he's been to many rehabs since. Obviously, since his first time, he's had trouble with it, and he continues. And he's also opened up about the struggles he's had with his mental health issues as well, which I think is quite important. I
was kind of wondering about that. When I was thinking about Paul Merson, as you say, he's talked a lot more recently about his battle with depression, and it made me wonder whether, since he stopped drinking, that's kind of come to the fore because his drinking was a way that he managed to block out his depressive thoughts previously.
Yes.
Do you think?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, very much so. I mean, he's had suicidal tendencies and all sorts, and it's and I think he played more than 20 times for England, so he can't have been a bad footballer. And I think that he was known for his. I mean, because he used to hang around with Ray Parlour as well, didn't he? And Tony Adams. They used to be terrible drinkers together in the Arsenal days. Really, during the George Graham period, I think it was before Wenger came along, and he did sort of straighten them all out. Which it was actually the FA that arranged for Paul Merson to go to rehab, which I haven't found of that happening with anyone else. But anyway, they stepped in and put him into rehab. But again, it might have been they've put him in there under duress because it didn't work. He's been to lots of rehabs since. But he continues to battle his addictions as we all do. And at the moment, as I understand, it's under control. And who's your
third midfielder?
Well, I've got Gaza.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so he's not really a holding midfielder, though, is he?
Well, no, but I've got a narrow midfield. Actually,
okay,
because I've got Merson, I've got Gascoigne, and my holding midfielder is Ray Wilkins.
Ray Wilkins. I didn't know he had addiction problems. So
You're joking?
That one's gone under the radar there.
Blimey, yeah, he had massive problem with drink.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he? No, I didn't even realise that. I mean, Ray Wilkins. I mean, he was a good player. The crab, as I used to call it, obviously, because he only used to pass sideways. But he had a decent career, didn't he, with Chelsea and Man United?
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be everybody's choice, I accept. And I did wonder about. I mean, I had quite a few alternatives here. I put him in just ahead of Dieter Hamann from Liverpool fame.
Yeah, well, I've got him on the bench.
Yeah, well, I've got him on the bench as well, I think. So yes, I had Wilkins, Gascoigne, and Merson, which I felt was a reasonable midfield.
Yeah, it is good. We'll have to agree on this at the end as to which players we think are going to stay in their final 11. But
you've certainly got you've got a little bit more flair in midfield with Stan Bowles, but
yeah,
he's going to be a bit hit and miss, isn't he, Bowles?
He is, but I like that. And also the fact that he's got Alzheimer's now apparently, and he can't remember his playing days, which I think is really sad. He was interviewed quite recently, or one of the papers went to see him, and he couldn't remember the stuff. He didn't remember the names. He couldn't remember who Jerry Francis was and Rodney Marsh and stuff, which obviously is awful. But I liked him anyway. I thought he was one of those players that never played enough for England because of his problems.
The thing about Stan Bowles, in the 1970s, QPR were one of those clubs that I wished I supported because I liked their shirt so much.
That's a spurious reason as to why they're one of the first.
So I think that's quite. I don't think that's particularly unusual.
No, I suppose it's not. You can get attracted to a kit, I suppose. And we could do another episode on kits, couldn't we, on its own, and football net, the goals themselves, But we did say we wouldn't do football, so we'd be indulging ourselves way too much on this one.
Right, so that's the midfield. Yeah. So who you got up front then?
Well, Gascoigne, did you not want to talk about him at all? I mean,
sorry, yeah, we've skated over Gascoigne. Yeah, go on, Gazza.
Because I think he's one. I've talked about him in groups quite a lot because he's one of the people that's had to play out his addiction and his recovery as it is in the public eye, and he's constantly hounded by the press who love taking pictures of him in a dishevelled state. And I think he's been in so many rehabs, and he was in rehab with one of our mutual friends who we know that's been in lots of rehabs as well. And they sort of
got about the same track record in rehab, haven't they?
They have. But I think he was again one of those players that was so talented and pushed the self-imploding button on himself so many times. But I suppose if you look at Italia '90 when he first came to fame, the Gazza's Tears, he was just a massive national icon at that time, wasn't he? Absolutely huge. He couldn't go anywhere. I mean, he even did Fog on the Time with Lindisfarne, didn't he? Which was a real tragedy in his shell suit on top of the pops. But I think he was again a chap who's, when you read his book, again I've read his book. And I watched the film, the documentary film called Gascoigne on the television just again the other night, and looking at his childhood, where a friend of his that he was out with got killed on the road at the age of 10, which had a massive impact on him. And he had these traumas in the past. And he struggles with it openly the whole time, but he's quite honest about it, and I quite like that. But I still like he's still got that cheeky grin, and he's got a good. He's full of good one-liners, really, isn't
he? Yeah, but don't you find when you see him now? I mean, it is just. I'm just filled with an overriding feeling of sadness when I see him.
Yeah, I do. You do. He looks dishevelled, doesn't he? He does look at the shadow of the man he was. But
actually, you mentioning him singing "Fog on the Time" with Lindisfarne on Top of the Pops for some reason made me think of Hoddle and Waddle singing "Diamond."
Oh my God, whatever it was. That was dreadful, wasn't it?
What an absolute shambles that is! And if anybody listening hasn't seen that, just stick that into YouTube. That will give you a shot.
Or another dreadful. Do you remember "Head Over Heels" by Kevin Keegan? Do you remember
Yes,
that? Do you remember that
yeah.
single? My God, that was dreadful, wasn't it? I think footballers should really stay away from the recording studios. There's no place. You've only got to look back at the old. The what? Sorry.
They on balance they should. Although I quite enjoyed John Barnes' rap on World in Motion.
Yeah, but that was New Order doing it all from a bit like like the Three Lions song and stuff. But if you look back at do you remember it used to be a tradition that the teams that got to the FA Cup final used to record a single, and there was some dreadful stuff. There was some awful stuff amongst that lot, wasn't there? Yeah,
I mean they were almost. In fact, I suspect all of them were awful.
I think they were. I remember We've Got the Whole World in Our Hands, which again I think was the Nottingham Forest song for that final we talked about earlier on that Gary Charles played in, which was very poor. In fact, in my record collection, I've got a collection of songs sung by the 1970 England World Cup squad.
Have you?
A whole album of covers, yeah. And it's in a.
Where do you keep it in alphabetical order? Where do you keep it in the collection?
Well, I keep those in I've got a separate collection for compilations, so it's in there amongst a few now ones and various bits and pieces. There's a few dodgy ones, so I know exactly where to locate it. But it's very, very poor. But I loved it at the time. The album cover was a big circular one, circular football. And it had lots of stuff in there, had all the squad in there, and I know biographies about them. Anyway, it was great. We've got off track, haven't we? Yes, Paul Gascoigne. I think one of my favourite quotes from Paul was that he said he drove past Wembley the other day and he noticed they were still trying to unscrew Colin Hendry out of the turf, which does make me laugh. I mean, that goal in Euro '96 that he scored against Scotland was just brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was magnificent. Yeah. And he was really responsible for some magical moments. I remember the earliest things I read about Paul Gascoigne was that when he first broke through as a player at Newcastle, I can't remember who was saying this, but apparently as a youngster, he used to beat people. He used to run past them. He used to be laughing as he beat them. So he'd go steaming past them, just laughing at them, chuckling and leaving them on their arse, which I thought was a wonderful... There's a kind of... It conjures up an image of wonderful youthful exuberance, which is kind of gone from him. I mean, obviously it's gone from him, but... he had everything in front of him then, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Again, I remember him saying that he used to go up to the players the opposite players on the pitch and said, "I thought you were supposed to be marking me today." At which point he sort of nutmeg them and run off. And he was full of that. And he used to entertain the crowd, and that's what you want. He used to get people off of their seats and he'd make people stand up when he got on the ball, and that's what you want. So I'd have him in my team all day long. So we've agreed on him anyway, haven't we?
Yeah. Okay, front three.
So the front three, you see I've got two players just behind the centre forward. So I've using the Pro Evolution Soccer terms, I've got a left wing forward and a right wing forward and a centre forward. So on the left, I've got Georgie Best.
Mm-hmm. Obviously.
Which obviously I think is going to be a shoe into that. I mean, he took sort of alcoholism to another level by drinking his way through 2 livers, didn't he? And I think that, and again, it was one of those players you thought, my God, please stop. I remember thinking at the time, even though I was, not being a Man United fan, but you just wanted him to get better, didn't you? Because he was so good. And I remember reading again some stories about him at some of his real low points. And he admitted at one point he was in a bar and he stole some money out of a woman's handbag that she'd left to go to the toilet. He'd nicked the money out there to buy himself some more drinks. And he said he'd never thought he could ever get that low. But that's where addiction takes you. It takes you to places where you never thought you'd go. And he was in and out of prison, wasn't he? He was famously in prison after he'd, again, drink driving and assaulting a police officer and that sort of thing. And do you remember, it was all over the telly, because I remember he spent Christmas behind bars in Ford Open Prison back in the 80s. And even there, he had no escape from the constant press attention. Did you see that he was on the Terry Wogan show? Do you remember seeing that? It was quite famous.
It was possibly one of the most uncomfortable, awkward things you could ever watch on television.
Really, really was. I think it's probably still on YouTube now, but I remember seeing it at the time and thinking, my God, what a shame, because there's so many people. He was so many people's hero, wasn't he? And then to see him go to that point where he's obviously so drunk. I mean, Wogan got rid of him quite quickly, didn't he, really? He cut the interview short, but it was such a shame. And I know he apologised afterwards, and he said it was one of the worst episodes of his alcoholism at that point, where it was really bad. And, he looked back at the show and he couldn't believe it. And I think we all look back and remember things, even though they might be hazy, of the shameful stuff we got up to. So, but again,
that's part of the problem with someone who's as iconic as George Best. Because he wasn't really in his heyday in my footballing consciousness. When I think about George Best, I tend to think more about his drinking.
It's a shame, isn't it? That defines him more than his playing career in many people's eyes.
I only really remember him as an alcoholic. I don't really remember him as a wonderful footballer. Yeah,
well, again, when I was, I suppose, as a kid, because I'm slightly older than you, he was obviously a mega hero in everyone's eyes at that time, and it was one of the players that I used to think, God, I wish he was English. Do you know what I mean? Because it almost seemed wasted playing in a Northern Ireland side that was so poor. He was the only person on the pitch who could actually do anything. And it's a bit like when Ryan Giggs was playing for Wales, when Wales were going through a really terrible patch. And I thought, it's a shame Giggs is not English, because he'd have fitted into the England side quite nicely.
You've upset everybody listening that might be Irish and everyone listening that might be Welsh. Do you want to have a go at a great Scottish player that you wish was English?
A Scottish player that I wish was English? Probably Kenny Dalglish.
Mm. Okay, great. That's everyone upset then.
I've upset that one.
You've upset the British Isles. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's George Best.
George Best, yeah.
Who have you got as your right wing forward then?
I've got Diego Maradona.
Yeah, I haven't got him, but I can understand why you would have him.
Well, I mean, he's hated, isn't he? Really, and again, if you watched Maradona, the documentary, which I can't sort of loathe the man really before that, but watching his slow descent into cocaine addiction and the pressure that he was under everywhere he went, even though he behaved badly, I can sort of forgive him for that for a little bit because of his addiction problems, and he was undoubtedly, one of the top 2 or 3 players ever to play the game. Mm. And I think, that if it wasn't for that hand of goal God against England, I think he'd have been a little bit more revered, because the other goal he got in that game was potentially, it's been voted the goal of the century. And it was, and I think we mentioned Kenny Sampson earlier on, didn't we? I think he went round him at one point, didn't he? He went round virtually the whole of the England team before he slotted in the net. And Peter Shilton obviously was playing that day as well.
I didn't know that had been voted the goal of the century. I would have thought that my goal at Railway Rovers would have been.
I don't think there's any video evidence of it, mate. It's just, I think it's been picked up in your own mind. I just remember as a bit of a tap-in, to be honest. But you in your mind, there's a 40-yard screamer that nestled at the top of the net.
Yeah, it's a bit like catching a fish. It gets, I get further and further away from goal every time I mention it.
Yeah. So and again, I mean, Diego Maradona in his later years, he had alcohol problems as well. So he was treated for hepatitis due to his alcohol abuse. So he fits the Addicts 11 quite well, I think.
Yeah, he's worthy of his place. It'd be interesting to see how best Maradona and Stan Bowles would get on in the dressing room.
And Gaza. Can you imagine it?
Can you imagine keeping them out of the bar? Crikey.
Or keeping them in their heyday of their drinking careers. I think having this lot in the same place would have been absolute mayhem. But I think a wonderful football team.
Who's your final pick?
Well, the centre forward is Jimmy Greaves.
Right.
Who have you gone for?
Well, my 3, I've got 2 of your front 3. So I've got George Best and Jimmy Greaves.
Okay.
Who, incidentally, Jimmy Greaves, one of the things that made me laugh about Jimmy Greaves was, it made me think of you, because he said when he was being interviewed once, I lost the 70s completely. Just don't remember the 1970s at all.
Well, it's strange because with Jimmy Greaves, we're talking about the players that we've seen, and I've seen most of these players live. I don't remember seeing Gary Charles. I don't remember seeing him, but or Maradona. To be honest, no, I don't see him live. George Best I did see, again in the early days against West Ham. But my first Jimmy Greaves' last game for West Ham, right, was on the 1st of May 1971. It's the last time he played for West Ham, and that was my very first West Ham game.
Oh.
So that was quite a nice synergy there.
Yeah.
So, and I remember the last game, and I remember seeing him play because I was sort of in awe. Obviously, I was more in awe of Bobby Moore. Yeah, we lost 1-0 at home. Oh. I think it was Frank Worthington got the winner. I might be wrong, but I know we lost 1-0 at home. I remember my dad because I've been badgering my dad to take me to go and see West. He wasn't a big football man, was he, my dad?
No.
And I badgered him, asking, "Can you take me? I want to go and see West Ham." So he'd taken advice amongst the other people who he worked with over at Goldwell, knew about football, and said, "Look, take him against Huddersfield. They're bound to win that one." He didn't want to take me to a team that could play against a team that they were going to get thrashed. They took me to Huddersfield, bang, 1-0. And it was a terrible game. But I think it was just in awe, standing in the chicken run for my first time as a kid. I'd have been 9. I'd have been 9 then. I'd have been 9, so it'd been my first game there. And I was in absolute awe of all the players. Harry Redknapp was playing.
Yeah.
So it's going back a little bit. And Jimmy Greaves.
I remember the first time I came up the steps and saw the pitch. That's quite a seminal moment, isn't it?
It is. I think it's the greenness of it. It might have been the size of it in there. I mean, Berlin Ground was lovely and compact, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it still seemed massive to me.
You're right. It is the greenness of it.
Yeah, it is.
That grass is so green. It sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but that's exactly what it's like.
No, it is, because it's juxtaposed with the. When you're walking around the back streets up the East End before you go into the West End, it's pretty grey and nasty, isn't it? And all of a sudden you go in there and there's this beautiful lush pitch. Well, that wasn't that lush in the 70s, I've got to say. It used to cut up quite a lot. But so Jimmy Greaves, I think one of the best players ever to play for England, really, and didn't really get the recognition. I remember seeing there was a time when he was being interviewed and he was saying, he didn't make the World Cup final. Didn't play in the final. Obviously, you were a bit sore about that because he wasn't even on the subs bench, was he? He had to wear a suit on the day and that sort of thing. And they were talking about when that later on England had reunions. The 66 squad used to have reunions, and he never used to go. And I remember that they were asking him at the time why he didn't go, and everyone thought it was just sour grapes. And he said no. He said because there's alcohol around and. I can't do that now. I can't. If I go to a place where there's drink flying around, I have to be careful because I'm an alcoholic. And I thought at the time you're just making excuses, mate. Just making excuses because you've got sour grapes. But in retrospect, looking back on it, I can see exactly why he did that. So I've got to, a lot. He stayed from the moment he went into. We didn't actually go into rehab. He stopped drinking. He went to hospitals and got detoxed in hospital, etc. He stayed sober ever since. I think a nice part of that was when he was going into hospital, he stopped at a pub on the way and he had a pint and a brandy and he said to the barman, "This is my last ever drink." And it was. And I remember that, and I was reading an article, it was online, but it's from the Daily Mirror, and they're saying that they recounted that story, and they said that unlike a huge number of other alcoholics, that was indeed his last ever drink. Which I thought, that's a bit nasty. But then again, I thought, that is quite true, though. Most people that go into recovery don't have one last drink. They keep relapsing and try again and try again and try again. So he done really well, and he was obviously a great player, one of the most natural goal scorers ever. I think most people would say that. The people that played with him and people that watched him, his goal scoring ability was second to none. And he was naturally always in the right place at the right time. He had touch, he had pace, he had everything about him, which was just about right for a forward. So I think for me, he's a shoo-in.
Well, that's your team, isn't it? But there's one place left in my team.
Yes, which instead
it doesn't really matter. I've got a front three. They're pretty interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
And my third forward, and I've got to say, I'm slightly disappointed that you haven't got him, and I hope you've got him on the bench. Okay. Is Frank McAvenny.
No, I haven't got him in there, no. I've forgotten about him, really. I'd forgotten about him. Yeah,
serious problem with cocaine, Frank.
Yes, he did, didn't he? Yeah, no, I'd forgotten about Frank.
So I put Frank McAvenny in for many reasons. One, because obviously he was instrumental in West Ham's best ever finish in the English leagues. Secondly, because I have a great fondness for that night at Upton Park where, celebrating one of his goals, I knocked the lens out of your spectacles.
Yeah, I had to watch the rest of the game through one eye. Horrible bastard.
Oh dear, that really gives me a feeling of joy every time I think of that.
It does, yeah. Well, that perhaps subconsciously why I didn't put Frank McAvenny in, because I'm still related to that horrific incident. I never did find that
Frank McAvenny, he had a problem with cocaine, lost everything, and it reminded me of a lovely lovely moment at Upton Park. So I felt I had to put him in the side. So We've been going quite a long time now. We should probably try and rattle through our sub bench and our managers if we can.
Right, on the subs bench, so I've got 5 players on there. Malcolm McDonald.
Yeah, I've got Malcolm McDonald.
Yeah, he was obviously he had an alcohol problem, and he ran a pub in Wigmore, which I might be wrong about this, but I think it was been previously owned by one of my relatives. So
really?
I've got a bit of a connection there. Yeah.
Wow.
But he was good though, wasn't he? I mean, he was a swashbuckling centre forward, a traditional hard,
proper
nasty
centre forward, wasn't he?
Proper centre forward. I remember him scoring 5 times for England against Cyprus in one game, which I think is still the record in one game. And I remember him on his debut for Newcastle when he played against Liverpool, and he scored a hat-trick and got knocked out. And in those days, if you got knocked out, you sort of played on for and I think he had a couple of people help him off the pitch. His feet were all dragging behind him that was the only way they could get him off. He wanted to carry on. He's a proper, but yeah, the alcohol got the better of him. He was a big alcoholic, so I have him on the bench.
Yeah, I've got Malcolm McDonald.
All right, you name your next one then.
Well, I've got Dieter Hamann.
Yeah, which I have as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I know you haven't really gone for a holding midfielder in your side.
No, he could do that. I don't like him because he came on as sub in the 2006 FA Cup final in that horrific time, which I draw a discreet veil over. It was one of those years. Luckily, it's during my lost decade, so it's all pretty hazy anyway.
Actually, I've just realised that I've only got players from the British Isles. So, yeah, he's lucky to get a place on the bench, really.
He was. Did you say you had Maradona in there or not?
No, I haven't got Maradona.
You haven't got him in there.
I've got Gascoigne, Wilkins, and Merson in my midfield.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Wilkins is better than Maradona, isn't he?
Not really in the same league, but
I bet Wilkins gave the ball away less often.
Probably he didn't handball it as much.
Okay, so who's your third?
I've got Matthew Etherington.
Me too.
Did he? Obviously, he had a big gambling problem. There's a lot of West Ham connections in here as well. I think playing for West Ham, you end up with addiction problems, don't you? Because of the horrors of having to deal with playing for West Ham.
Yeah, it's surprising that anyone linked with West Ham doesn't have addiction problems, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's more like it. So Matthew Etherington, decent player, but he had his issues. The next one I've got down there is Ida Gudjonsson.
Oh, okay. So you haven't got any defenders on your bench?
No, I haven't, no.
Okay. I did consider putting Gudjonsson in my starting 11, but in the end he didn't make the 11, he didn't make the bench. No,
you dismissed him. But yeah, again, a big gambler. And I've got... oh, sorry. I've got Keith Gillespie in there as well.
Again, I had him in my draft squad, but he didn't make the final cut.
But is he on your bench or not?
No, he's not on my bench. I've got Dominic Matteo.
Oh yeah. Which again, yes, I think you're. Yes, I think I've just gone for players which with a scant disregard to where I'm actually going to play them.
Yeah, I think I've got a more balanced squad than you.
I think you probably have.
And then have you got a goalkeeper?
Not on the bench, no. Well, we can put Roy Carroll in there, won't we? If we come to our final
Well, I've got Roy Carroll on my bench, but who have you got as your fifth sub then?
I haven't got a sub goalkeeper, no.
No, but who is your fifth sub? Because you've given us 4.
Oh, right. No, I think I've given you 5. I know Malcolm McDonald, Dieter Harman, Keith Gillespie, Matthew Etherington, Ida Goodjohnson.
Oh, yeah, you have. Yeah, that's true. And your manager?
Who would you say? I've got it written down. Yes, exactly. I got Cloughie as well. He's one of the few people that, again, he had to have a liver transplant because of his alcohol abuse. But I think as a manager, he was good anyways. And even if you're going to pick one of your top managers, regardless of what the criteria was going to be, Cloughie is going to have to be there, isn't he?
I'll tell you what, though, if you had Brian Clough managing this lot, there'd be no keeping the team out of the bar, would there? He'd be first in the bar.
Yeah, he would. I think he used to encourage them to have a tipple, didn't he, on their away games before they went to bed. He'd make sure they all had a pint.
Did he?
But I think, yeah, he did, and I think it's typical because he used to. You know, we talked about this before. Where you like to, as an alcoholic, you quite like to have other people around you drinking. So he would insist they all had a pint before they went to bed on a away trip. He'd go to the bar and he'd bring a tray of beers across. He'd sit with them all. They'd all have a drink, and then they went up to bed. So just the one, but I suspect Cloughie would have stayed on behind. He'd sent them all to bed, probably stayed in the bar himself, because that's what I'd have done, definitely. But yeah, he had a liver transplant, and obviously he died of stomach cancer in the end. But he did. I think he brightened the whole game of football, and some of his interviews are just legendary, aren't they?
They are
just brilliant. And that there's again the one I watched it recently again on YouTube where him and Don Revie were being interviewed together at the time where Cloughie had just taken over at Leeds, and they hated each other, those two, and it was absolutely brilliant TV. Anyway, Cloughie in as manager, definitely.
One of the things that really strikes me about looking at this team, this squad, is there are some characters in here I don't think the like of which we've really got in the modern game.
No, we haven't. No.
And that might be just because I'm getting old and everything in the past feels like it was better. But
I think that there's going to be a bit of that, isn't there? Each generation has its own set of heroes and own set of memories. But I remember, I don't think you went. I think I went up to Moat Park to watch George Best and Rodney Marsh doing a talk. No. And so Rodney Marsh could have potentially been in there, but I don't think he actually ended up with a big problem. But I know up on the stage there, Rodney Marsh and George Best had several bottles of wine lined up, which they were steaming through whilst they're doing the question and answer session. But very entertaining.
Mm. Well, that's been a very interesting wander through football history there. I think a couple of good squads there.
I think there's a couple of good squads. Do you reckon we'll put the final 11 there? We put it up on Twitter?
Yeah, good idea. So what we're trying to pick the best 11 from our 2 squads.
Should we do that off air?
Yeah, I think we probably should.
Yes.
So we'll do that and put it up, and then we can invite comments, can't we, on Twitter and Facebook?
We can.
All right, Squire. That's good.
Okay, mate.
All right, Squire.
Excellent.
Good work.
Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon, mate.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Laters. Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work, visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can email us to let us know what you think of the show or with any questions that you might have. And finally, we want to thank you for listening and ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.
And it looks like I'm falling all over again, head over heels in love with you. And it looks like... What a load of shit.